Welcome to Voices from the Bench, a dental laboratory podcast. Send us an email at info@voicesfromthebench.com or look for us on Facebook at Voices from the Bench. Greetings and welcome to Voices from the Bench. We are at episode 105. My name is Elvis.
My name is Barbara. So far, anyways, I should say. I might change it after being quarantined for a few days, because I know you've been quarantined for a couple weeks. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's amazing how fast time goes when you're not really doing much, but it's definitely a different dynamic in life. I'll tell you that much. It seems like all you do is you make food and do laundry.
Yeah. Fortunately, you can get outside now, right? So I'm expecting you to go for some long runs and be a little more normal, hopefully.
Yes, I've been able to go on a few runs, and it's been nice to get out. You see somebody on the street, and you got to cross the street, which is a bit odd.
Same here.
Yeah, but everyone understands. You know, everyone's just trying to get out and get air. Indiana, last week, mandated a stay-at-home order, the governor. Pretty much everything is shut down in this state.
So do you leave your house at all? Just asking. Do you go to the grocery store, the gas? I mean, are you just pretty much
Nope.
down and you guys have enough supplies?
Home delivery of groceries is what we've been doing.
Wow.
Frozen groceries and local grocery stores will do home delivery, and they've now just like drop it off. And we're playing it safe. All the food we get, we bring it in with gloves and spray it down and wait. If we can, we'll wait even 3 days to touch the non-perishables.
Wow.
Because that's what we're told. The virus lives on packages that long.
So how's your lab doing? Give me an update on you, and I'll give you an update on us.
Yeah, absolutely. The lab is basically not accepting work. I mean, we'll take it, but we're limiting the drivers out, obviously.
Yeah.
People still ship to us, but we're finishing up work. We got about 30 more cases to do on Monday, and we're just bringing in a skeleton crew to finish it. And then after that, we're just going to kind of wait and see.
Yeah. So in your great state of Illinois, did you guys furlough your workers, lay them off, or you just kind of they're at home? Are they taking vacation pay? Give me a little bit of an insight.
What we're doing is furloughing.
Okay.
We're telling them that there's no work. I mean, we could be open. We're considered an essential business in Indiana.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's no work is the reason why we're not open.
Yeah.
We're furloughing. People can file for unemployment. They can get on the new order that the government's released where people get additional unemployment.
Great.
And then hopefully in not too long a time, we can start calling and bringing people into work.
Yeah. Knight actually furloughed 100 employees Friday.
All at once?
I hate it. I really hate it. But same thing. Welcome them back. We're going to pay the insurance all the way to May, and for sure we want them back. Can't wait for some normalcy to come. And everybody took it really well. I mean, they've seen other laboratories in the area closed a couple weeks ago, so we tried as long as we could and as long as work was coming in, and then all of a sudden it was just like boom, 2 cases come in the door and you're used to 400. It's like really shocking, but we're trying to take care of everybody. We created a Facebook page for our team members, and everybody's kind of connecting there, and we're doing as best we can. I'm taking it a little hard because I just can't believe it, but I'm sure everybody else is too, so I don't put myself in any different position.
We talk about the dental lab industry a lot, but every industry is getting hit.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I got takeout. It's funny. There's like 5 cars in line for takeout. Weird. You can't go out to restaurants. You can't go to the mall. You can't do anything. And it's just like, wow. And you know what? I do like the fact that it bring the family back and all of those things. And I see so many people out exercising and, just hanging out with their family.
A lot of dog walking in our neighborhood. Is anybody at night working, like phones, administrative, anything?
Yeah. So tomorrow we've got a crew of about 20, myself included. We've got a fair amount of WIP in the system, which is work in progress in my world. We brought in as many people as we could to finish the work in progress done. And then myself and about 6 other folks are going to be there answering the phone, doing emergency cases. As long as there's something for us to do, we'll be there. And then we'll, as it grows back and doctors get back to work and we start growing again, then we'll just reach out to everybody and bring them back as fast as we can. So I'm a big believer in teeth. I love what we do. People always need teeth. There's a lot of people out there right now going, oh my God, my tooth hurts. And, they're
Mm.
walk back to the dentist. I really don't believe that they're canceling their insurances. And I think they just can't go to the dentist. So I'm a big believer in the fact that we'll come back with a vengeance. And I really think that'll happen. Maybe May, June, whatever, but we're coming back.
Yeah. I encourage everyone when they get their stimulus check to save it for dental work. That's what I'm
Yeah.
hoping for.
Yep. Me too. All right, so let's get on with the episode. Enough with that sad stuff. Sorry, guys. Just keeping it real.
Yeah. Last week, we had a great update from Bennett Napier on some resources that the NADL has put together for labs. Now, a week has gone by, so we wanted to bring Bennett back on again to update us on what dental labs should know now.
All right.
Please note that this was recorded on Saturday the 28th in the afternoon. We mention this because of how much information changes on a daily basis. So join us as we get an update from Bennett. Unfortunately and fortunately, we have Bennett here with us with the NADL to talk more about the COVID-19 and the dental lab industry. How are you, sir?
I guess probably as well as everybody else.
Yes.
Just trying to look for the bright side where you can find it. And, each day brings new information and new decision makings. I just appreciate both of you for keeping the message out there and as much as you've been doing, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to be on last week and continuing that on as much as we need to going forward, just to kind of bring where we can new information or at least new resources for people to look at based on their needs. So happy to be back with you to at least share information.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you've been doing that. NADL has been doing that all along on Facebook, and I've seen it on a lot of social media. Fortunately, Elvis and I have this platform as well, so we're trying to get out as much information as we can as possible. I know for me, it's been a rough week. Elvis, too. Can you kind of give us a little bit of what's happening on the small business development front? What's going on with the centers and the local resources?
Sure. NADL had a webinar last Wednesday. We'll have another one next week, and we'll probably have maybe at least two or three more, it looks like. But last week was kind of more what I would call an overview webinar of just kind of the landscape that we knew as of Wednesday afternoon, which obviously changed, 48 hours later, which we'll talk about that too. But, I think the biggest thing that we recognized with, whether it's emails or phone calls coming into NADL, what we have learned, if anything, is that every situation is different. In many cases, especially in a webinar format, over 200 people on the webinar and people were posting questions, and a lot of them were very case specific, which is obvious that, makes sense because they're looking at their own specific needs, which is where they should be. And what we've learned is there's always kind of the first question leads to 2 to 3 more questions. And so, I think we have been doing, certainly the last maybe 72 hours, is try to determine if laboratories have reached out to local resources, which all states have what's called small business development centers. Their government program, they've always been in existence. They're not new, and their services are free. And so what we've encouraged people to do, if they haven't reached out to that entity as a resource, we've got links to that on our NADL news page where people can look state by state. Not every city has one. The large metropolitan areas usually have one, but every state has at least one, if not more. And so people can type in their zip code and find the one that's closest to them and coordinate some conversation with the local resources. And so NADL has multiple HR partners that we work with, including C Management and Insperity. And just even talking with our partners that have been helping labs, that every city, every state's different, not only with this particular situation, but just in general. So you may have, relative to furlough regulations, believe it or not, there's differences of furlough regulations at the state level in some respects, depending on where people are located. So it gets the bottom line is it's not usually a quick answer. And so what we have to kind of do, kind of what I call surgical focus of where's the lab located, who have they talked to thus far, if anybody, and then kind of go to the next step to say, okay, based on these facts and circumstances, who are the best either local resources that are available at a government level, and then certainly if one of our partners can help them, with some of their decision making kind of in a parallel sense, we'll recommend that too based on whatever their particular situation is. Certainly everybody was kind of waiting on bated breath for the newest relief package to come to fruition, which obviously got signed
Oh, yeah.
on Friday. And
Thank God.
so people were already posting questions on social media or calling us saying, well, how do I apply for this? Where do I go? And the bottom line is this is new territory for everybody, meaning
Yeah.
when I say everybody, banks, HR professionals, attorneys, this is all new territory. And so
Yeah.
even if we take the examples of banks, people who obviously have strong relationships with their banks may have gotten information by email, or if they've got a commercial banker that they work with. At this stage, there's certain elements of the relief that got signed into law yesterday where only banks that are Small Business Administration preferred lenders will actually be able to execute some of the relief package. And so that's important for labs to determine if their bank is an SBA preferred lender.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look at the whole country, there's only 2,000 banks in the country that qualify, and the banks have to opt in to actually participate in the program. So there's relief out there, but then you have to determine, okay, who's a local provider or partner that I might have that can help me with this. And, so it's a moving target, unfortunately. But, I think as people continue to do the analysis of what the relief entails, how it might apply to them, which is still ongoing. And then you have to determine, okay, like who can actually work with to actually do this and potentially apply for some of these things. Clearly, many labs hopefully had a good relationship with the local banker. If they haven't already, which I'm assuming they have conversations with their bank, talk about are they qualified for these new relief packages? And even if they're qualified, are they going to participate? And if not, then they've got to look again with qualified partners to be able to look at some of those things. So that's a big issue, I think, clearly, for people to look at. I would say over the course of the week, if we go back to March 16th, a lot of labs just went ahead and kind of made decisions just assuming the worst, which probably, quite frankly, is probably what is occurring, and went ahead and did furloughs or some layoffs, starting on March 16th.
Yeah.
Clearly, as the week progressed, more and more labs made those decisions because talking with some of the banks, even late yesterday, some of the banks, even big banks, we're talking about, Bank of America, SunTrust, Wells Fargo, even those are saying it could be 2 to 3 weeks before some of these banks will actually even take applicants for some of these new relief loans that are available. So time is our enemy and friend, depending on how you look at it, but it certainly, everybody needs money now. And this waiting game is making it very difficult. So it's people having to kind of make daily decisions based on what's available, and then kind of look at what their long-term objectives are, and then kind of work back from that. So we're just trying to help people kind of go through that decision-making process, and then based on whatever their objectives are, say, okay, who are the good partners that can help you? And in many cases, it's not like this one partner is right for everybody, because that's not usually the case. And so we kind of at least try to help them identify, okay, who locally, when I say locally, in your city, in your state, might also be a local resource, even post pandemic as it relates to the stay at home orders and essential versus non essential work, that kind of thing. This is going to be a long haul relative to some of this, in the sense that some of these loans, the way they're constructed, if people utilize them, have a 10-year payback period. So these
Yeah.
people that you make decisions to partner with to help provide some of this relief, they're going to be with you a while. That's important to note as well.
How are you doing in your office, if you don't mind me adding that in?
Sure. I guess I'd say about 10 days ago, Florida at this stage, there's been certain county. Well, I would say this: Florida as a state doesn't stay at home yet. That could come. So each county and some cities have made their own guidance. And so we were about a week ahead of our local guidance. There's not a closure of businesses, if you will. All businesses actually in our county can stay open, but clearly social distancing is recommended. And so we started that about 10 days ago, where 50% of the staff are in the office on one day and the other 50% are working remote, and then we switch so that every other day somebody's able to come in and be there in the office if they choose to do so. And we've worked just like everybody else. If there's people who aren't comfortable coming in, we made those accommodations for them to continue to work remote. We've had, myself included, I self-quarantined. I actually haven't been to the office in 14 days. I've got a couple more days before that goes out. And then we've got one other person that had to self-quarantine because of a spouse. So she'll be able to return to work on April 1st. So we have not had to do, any workforce reductions at this stage, but based on the nature of the work we do, but, which is in some respects been good because then that's allowed us to be as much accessible as much as possible to the laboratory community, with calls and emails and social media messaging with people reaching out to help get some guidance and, links to resources and stuff. So like that's been good just in that sense that we've been accessible and haven't had to have any interruption in our ability to help people or at least direct them to the right places.
It's a scary time out there. What about resources for dental lab technicians? Rather than just dental labs, what about the technicians that are out of work and looking for support?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we've definitely had calls from non-owners and managers. We obviously, NBC obviously, has CDT constituency, and we have a technician membership category for NADL as well. So I'd say the lion's share of inquiries have been from owner managers, but we certainly have had non-owner managers, meaning, technician employees or administrative personnel. So again, we're there to help them. And, in many cases, it's just really, if they haven't gotten information already from their employers, we obviously try not to get in between employer-employee processes for obvious reasons. But what we can do is make sure that they have full understanding of the local, when I say local in this sense, usually state resources that are available. Each state, again, has different processes and programs, some of which have been created in the last 2 weeks, for some emergency elements. And so outside of traditional unemployment insurance, which is state administered, there's some, especially for groups that, have furloughs, there's some states that have what's called a reemployment assistance program, which is a little bit different from unemployment assistance. We tried to, again, direct them to the right state agencies that can help them if they've got some key questions based on either what's already occurred or what their employers have indicated probably will happen in the next week or two based on business conditions, so that they have been able to do a little bit of homework and due diligence before that might actually occur. So that's been good too, in the sense that we've been able to help administrative and technician personnel as well. And I would say this, I think based on, except maybe for a couple of examples, we have seen that most laboratories, if they've had to make decisions already in terms of layoffs or furloughs, have communicated that in a very effective manner in terms of the why behind it, and then what they're doing over the course of the future. And so I think that's a good sign in the sense that in the midst of all of this chaos, people are trying to provide as much clear documentation as they can in detail to give clarity, and which is really difficult given the situation. So that's been good to see, and again, I think, if we look at trying to make positives out of a, very difficult situation, three of us clearly, and others have seen just the great stories from laboratories with 3D printers that have gotten involved with doing PPE for the healthcare supply chain. And it's great to see that in spite of people trying to keep their own doors open, you're saying, hey, we've got technology that can help. Let's do it. And that's a true testament to just the ingenuity and, just the passion that our market and our profession has for healthcare in general. And again, helping the patient. We're just obviously helping a different type of patient in this kind of situation. But again, people have really stepped up, and that's been nice to see.
Yeah, we had the video from Carbon, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, explaining how to do the face masks and how to do I believe the testing. What was it called? A swab. How to print all of that. And then, once you do it, where do you go? How do you do it? So I think they were super fast in talking about that. I saw a Facebook post with Reed Nunnally, Alexander Wunsha. Is that how you pronounce it, guys?
Yes,
Wunsha?
yes. Wunshy.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah, he and his wife, I saw that they were doing it as well, and Knight's probably going to start doing that next week. So, yeah, I agree with you. Anything we can do.
Yep.
Hard times.
And again, just looking at kind of the trajectory, and again, it's state specific, where there's been higher case concentration of people that are testing positive, then obviously that affects what's occurring in that area, even more what I call rural areas. When I say rural, or less population going out in the west, in certain parts of the Midwest. By the tail end of the week, meaning yesterday, people had work in progress or a few things coming in, but now this is not scientific, but probably are people that are at about 20% of normal production as of yesterday, and then maybe going into, like you said, Elvis, going into Monday or Tuesday of next week, it's going to be a zero or a very slow trickle, if any.
Yeah.
Last week, NADL put on a great webinar about dental labs and how they can utilize resources to help with all what's going on. But you have one coming up this week that's all about infectious control with the good people at SafeLink.
Right. Yeah. And we were real pleased that they were willing to do it. So they've always obviously been a great partner with us in the marketplace as well. But, where last week was what I call more, I don't say generic, but it was more comprehensive in nature, just as kind of an overview of, what was occurring. And again, this was on Wednesday, which was pre the third relief package, if you will, in terms of what was coming with that. But for next week's webinar, it's going to focus on kind of, obviously there's not really much work coming in right now, clearly, but a lot of what we want to talk about is that Gary and Mary are going to address is like, okay, what happens when we're back up and running? Even if there's an all clear, quote unquote, we probably need to look at things differently, especially for delivery drivers, and certainly just, again, clear reminders of the importance of proper infection control and any additional protocols that need to be taken into consideration going forward. And again, even discussion related to chairside services, that's a niche for a lot of labs in a good way. And, when that work starts to pick back up again in terms of, from a health and safety component, again, what are some things that, if you weren't doing it already, what do you need to do? And so that's really what they're going to focus on next week, and that's important for people. Yesterday, CDC did post on their website some additional protocols specifically related to the dental setting on COVID, which were not there before. So we'll address part of that during the webinar next Wednesday as well. The webinar that we conducted last week is on our NADL.org news page, so people can sign up on our learner community and listen to that one free of charge. So all of these are free of charge. Members, non-members, doesn't matter. We've expanded the capacity so we can take up to 500 registrants for these webinars, and our goal is to make sure as many people who want to gain access to this kind of information that we have the ability to deliver it to them.
Thank God for that.
Labs have always had great disinfecting protocols, but I can only imagine what's going to be new after all this.
Yeah, we've all been in labs. I mean, we've seen people who do it really well, and we see people who do it really well on certain days. It's this is probably not the time to be inconsistent. So these protocols are there for a reason, and for a really good reason, clearly, given current circumstances. So just making sure that people have a clear understanding of what needs to be done and how to do it and how to stick with it. I think we all get complacent, on a lot of different things in life, and we all have the same human nature. We say, oh, this is not going to happen to us, or it's not going to affect us. I think we've all learned, that's not really probably the case anymore. That's not the world we live in anymore.
Definitely not.
Yeah, it's a very profound statement. It really isn't. So early on, I was just looking around going, this isn't going to affect us. We're all going to be good. I have an optimistic attitude. And now, after yesterday, furloughing the whole company after, 35 plus years, I'm kind of super sad today. So yeah, I agree. And I thank God you guys are here. And I thank God for this podcast, Elvis, getting all this information out to everybody so they can kind of plug in and see what they need to do. And I'm very grateful for the things I can be grateful for. So
sure, we appreciate it. I would say this, obviously, like you said, there's several vendor partners out there in the market that are providing special programs for labs to work with them collaboratively to, again, help the supply chain on PPE. So I just encourage people, if they have ability, if you will, to get involved in some of those efforts, look at that. And everybody in society can help in certain ways. And, we may not be able to help, obviously with clearly financial contributions right now, but if we can use our technology and put that to good use, that's a societal benefit. So that's good. Just going back on what we talked about last week in terms of the foundation, the foundation obviously has opened up its learning library through end of May. If people are furloughed and technically not laid off, but just obviously don't have production work to do, if they're trying to hone up on their skills or learn new techniques or processes. There's suppliers have done that. Foundations has done that. So
Oh, yeah.
there's a lot of online education. I would say this just as a footnote. It'll be interesting to see 6 to 8 months from now when the meetings, whenever that timetable is, where meetings can be held as it relates to 50 or more people, will we see kind of almost a resurgence of the in-person meeting because people just may be clamoring for that. So it'll be interesting to see when we get to the end of summer and the fall, fingers crossed, that we're in a good posture to have those things occur, what the meetings look like into this year and certainly going into first quarter next year. It's difficult to kind of ponder what the future looks like because we don't know. I think we'll every week, every day we learn something new. And, if this is kind of like the flu in the sense that it's seasonal, what does that look like for first quarter 2021? Hopefully, all the healthcare supply chains determine what to do to mitigate what we're seeing now, or at least certainly not have a repeat performance. But I think all we can do is look for the positive and, know that pretty much all of this is out of our control and do the best you can with the environment we're living in.
I know I'm jonesing for a live dental laboratory conference. I mean, we're supposed to be in Texas right now.
Yes.
It's hard.
Yeah. So thank you. We appreciate your insight and being able to share everything through the podcast and everything else you guys are doing at the NADL. We know super stressful times, but like Elvis, this is his brainchild once again.
Yeah.
We're on a Saturday. We're all hanging out at home, but at least we get to do the podcast and get some of this out into the world. So thank you.
We can make a joke out of it. It's not really funny, but you guys were the precursor to social distancing.
I've got my bathing suit on, guys. After this, I'm going outside all by myself, and I'm going to lay out in the sun and just chill.
Yeah. Sorry, Elvis, you're still in Indiana.
Yeah, it's raining, so.
It's cold there.
Yeah, Elvis, it's 84 degrees right now, but you can't go to the beach, so, oh well.
I know.
Yeah, the public beaches are closed, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it, as always, Bennett.
All right, thanks for keeping the communication channels flowing. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
So thank you for all you're doing and updating us, Bennett. We appreciate your candor and everything that you've got to teach us and everybody else that's listening. Please note that any links Bennett mentions we have listed on the show notes of this episode. Also, make sure to follow the National Association of Dental Laboratories Facebook page for the most up-to-date information. And trust me, they're really trying hard. They're probably working from home, but they're trying to update us, let us know what's going on, who to contact. I know they're taking a ton of phone calls. So thank you, guys. We appreciate you.
Yeah, and this information's not just for NADL members. Anybody with a lab or in a lab should know this stuff. It's important to keep informed.
Yeah.
And because Barb and I feel that it's important to have some sense of normalcy, we will continue with our regularly scheduled episode. Back when the world could still travel, Barb and I went to the Voices of Dentistry in Arizona, thanks to the good people at Kettenbach, to talk to some dentists and vendors that usually work with dental practices, but also provide some insight that a dental lab might find interesting. First up, we talked to the very first guest we got to talk to at Voices of Dentistry, Dr. Brad Madison from Wellesley, Massachusetts. He talks about why he came to Voices of Dentistry and his experiences with all the labs that he uses. So we always like to hear from a dentist's perspective.
Yeah, man. Especially now, I should say.
Yeah, it's going to be relevant to us in coming months.
Mm-hmm.
Then we talked to a really interesting company that's all about the light curing units in doctors' offices. Felix from Blue Light Analytics talks about how we should be asking about the doctor's light curing unit before we remake any crown that won't stay on.
Do you know, Elvis, that after we talked to him, I actually called the lab and said, hey, guys, if you have any questions on something debonding, you need to make sure that you're letting the dentist know they need to check their light. So that was super great material.
Good stuff. Never even thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then, because so many of us wear loupes at the bench, we talked to Kristen Jenson from Innova Illumination about the importance of good loupes and loupes with lights. Great stuff from a much safer world pre-COVID-19. So join us from the Voices of Dentistry Summit, thanks to our good friends at Kettenbach. Have you tried Whitmix's Vericore ZR Pro Zirconia discs yet? They not only produce very natural looking crowns and bridges, but they are very strong at 1,140 megapixels. When it comes to zirconia used in dentistry, high strength and excellent aesthetics is the end game. Vericore ZR Pro is available in 3 varieties: unshaded for those who prefer to design their own shading scheme, pre-shaded in all 16 Avita classic shades plus a bleach for those who want accurate shade reproduction without having to use liquid colorants before sintering, and finally a multi-layered version, ZR Pro ML, which results in a natural color transition from cervical through incisal areas. Whitmix's top-of-the-line zirconia provides you with an ideal level of both value and chroma, which translates into desirable aesthetics that closely mimic that of natural dentition. So if you want to give your dentist something that is sure to win praise, send them your beautiful zirconia restoration made from Whitmix's Vericore ZR Pro. You can purchase the 98mm discs from your dealer or order directly online from shop.whitmix.com. Voices from the Bench. The interview.
Ooh, you're the best, you see?
Oh, good.
Did you
We've got
that?
seats.
See, this is why I bring
Give
her
me 5.
along. She's good
All
at
right.
getting people to do things.
Yeah, I just bat my eyelashes and say, can you please?
So here we are at Voices of Dentistry, and we finally have our first sit-down interview. No pressure.
Yeah,
No pressure.
No, this is great.
Dr. Bradford Madison?
Yeah,
Madison.
Madison. Yeah,
Madison.
You just call me Brad. That's
Brad.
fine.
Right.
Do you go
Yeah.
by Dr. Brad?
I just go by Brad. I just tell
Really?
patients
Do you
Brad,
not,
yeah.
like, go with the doctor pretext?
No, I don't know. I just never. I never really got into that. I like to have a personal relationship,
Yeah.
with, especially with patients. I just.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a very small practice outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay. What's the
So,
town? Is it still
it's
Boston?
called it's called Wellesley. It's about
Wellesley.
2
Sounds
towns
very
outside
East
the
Coast.
city. Yeah,
Wellesley.
yeah, it's very snooty. You might have heard of Wellesley colleges there. So.
Yes, actually
yeah.
I have. So
Yeah.
you're on the East Coast. So number 1, how did you learn about Voices of Dentistry? And number 2, obviously you love podcasts. So how did you get into that?
Yeah, I've been listening to podcasts for a long time. Actually, I did have a podcast a long time ago when I was probably in my teens, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I did.
Did you have to mail the cassette?
Basically, I ran with
He's
my
not
friend.
that old.
No, I'm not. I ran a podcast with my friend about like technology and what was going on with technology. But back then, the podcast app had just come out.
Sure.
Yeah.
So no one really listened to it at all. But yeah, it was pretty fun. It was called Tech Night Radio, and it was off of
Sweet.
a website that we had called the Different District Podcast, which was all about like what was going on with Apple computers and things like that.
Really?
So,
So
yeah.
technology.
So you were an
Yeah.
early
Yeah.
adapter.
Yeah, I
for
was.
Sure.
Yeah, our early claim to fame was that we got a cease and desist from Apple because we hosted all of the commercials
Ooh.
that Apple had because there's no YouTube or anything.
Yeah.
So we had everything online.
Wow.
And
Do you
yeah.
still have that letter?
I think my friend who I
That's
who I
pretty
did the
cool,
podcast-
though.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
claim to
We had to
fame.
take everything off, otherwise they're going to sue us. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's my experience with podcasts. In terms of dental podcasts, I just started listening to them. When I was in my associateship, I felt kind of insular and like I didn't have a lot of people to talk
Sure.
to about podcasts. So I got into podcasts a way to see what else was going on out there. I didn't have the best associateship experience, so I wanted to make sure that like the things I was feeling were like happening to other people. So podcasts were a window into the rest of the dental world.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's
I
why
love
I got
that
into it.
explanation. That's
Yeah.
great. So what about Voices of Dentistry?
Actually, I was looking at Microscopes, and somebody gave me Alan Mead's information, and so I talk with Alan
He was
all
like
the
Mr.
time.
Microscope.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
Microscope, exactly. So
Yeah.
I talk with Alan a lot about microscopes. I'm thinking about buying a microscope this year, so that's how I got involved, and he texted me and said, you should really come this year. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
So I came down. And I go to Spear a lot, which is in Scottsdale,
Sure.
so
Good.
familiar
I
with it.
just
part of
asked
a-
about that.
You
yeah.
part of a Spear study group in your area, or
I am. I'm actually part of 2. I don't make it to all the
Overachiever.
meetings. I don't make it to
Just
all the meetings.
most
but,
don't?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. It is fun though. It's a good thing, and it's it's a good way to get on the same page as everybody.
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean, even as a lab,
You're
love
in it,
Spear.
right? Yeah.
There's 3 of us at our lab that participate in 9 different Spear study clubs in our area.
That's great.
I love them.
You're
love
an
them.
overachiever too, Elvis.
Yeah, well.
I'm surrounded by them.
Yeah.
We're all here to make you look bad.
So the last speaker was talking about printers and designers. Do you have any of that technology?
Sure.
Are you looking into any of that?
Yeah. Well, I'm always like trying to get into the next thing. I do have a 3D printer. I have that cheap one he was talking about. And
Yeah.
he's right. It doesn't work very well.
The one he called Jesus or the other one?
No, not the Jesus. The Jesus one hasn't come out, I guess.
Okay.
So, but no, it's a. I think when I bought it was $400. I guess now it's
that's great.
$260.
That's insane.
It's great, but the amount of time you spend trying to get it to work properly, and there's
What
failed
do you
prints
use it
and
for,
things.
if you don't mind?
I do some. I can't call it Invisalign, but Invisalign clear aligner stuff with it. And for small cases where it's manageable to print and do the lab work, it's been great because sometimes the Invisalign cost can be quite high. So
Yeah.
I've been doing that, and I have a small office, so I have a little bit of extra time here and there. It's not like I'm strung out doing crowns all day.
Yeah.
So I do quite a bit of my own lab work. So, yeah, It's been fun. It's been an interesting experience. You learn more about the process. Like I said, I try and do a lot of my lab work, and so not in terms of making crowns and things, but I pour models. If I'm not doing it digital, I'll ditch dyes and things like that. So
Do you enjoy it?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it helps me become a better dentist because I'm seeing
agree.
things, especially analog-wise. Digital, of course, you pull something
You
up on
see
the
it,
screen and you're like, ooh, that prep could be a little better there, and maybe I should go in and adjust this. But then when you're pouring models, too, it's the same thing. When you're working with
You see it a lot more in the model than you do in the impression.
Yeah,
God,
for sure. When you can see, oh, God, I didn't leave them a whole lot of clearance there. I'm going to get something back. It just, that rattles around in your head more when you're in the mouth doing work. You're like, ooh, the technician, I got to help him out here or something like that. So I hated lab work in dental school. And then when I realized that it had a direct impact on what the outcomes of my cases and knowing at least how to do it, maybe I don't have to do it every time, that really made me think it was worth it to understand it better.
Yeah. So how many labs do you utilize with your practice now?
I use 2 primarily. I use one that has a very fast turnaround time. They're kind of just milling, staining, glazing, polishing, and then I have one that does a little bit more. And then I have 3, I guess.
Yeah.
I have a guy down the street that does aesthetics, and he actually comes for my inserts, which is great. He'll bring his ovens. You can.
Oh, he does it all.
I do that too.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. I have a couple doctors that I'll come over and.
It's an
do my
incomparable
restorations in
service.
the
His
mouth.
name is Aki Yoshida. He does a lot of lecturing. He's right down the street.
Yeah. Awesome. So you probably pay a fair amount for those restorations. So
those
you do
I
have
do.
a high aesthetic.
Those I do.
Excellent.
And I can only really do that, obviously, fee for service, because his lab fee is higher than my crown fee sometimes, so I have to pass that on to the patient.
Single central.
Yeah, exactly.
If you pay for it 4 times, you're going to do it 4 times, so you might as
Exactly.
well charge $1,500.
Yep.
That'd be nice, but interesting.
How did you find the labs that you use? Was it someone came in and sold to you? I'm trying to get your perspective of what
I had
we do.
I had a dental professor who actually bought a practice the same time I bought a practice, and he's a prosthodontist actually. And he said, you should talk to Bob. So I went and visited the lab. The owner's name is Bob. I think they have probably like 10 people working for them. And it's a full service lab. They don't do removable, but it's full service fixed pros lab. And I like their systems. I like the people that were there. They explained to me the whole process. I have Bob's cell phone number, so I just text him whenever I want to. So that kind of thing is important to me. Another consideration that was important was that the people doing the work I could actually get in contact with, not just Bob, because he's not going to do every single thing that I send them, but being able to text somebody and say, do we think we can change this, or is there something we could do here, or, here's some pictures of a case I'm thinking about doing. What are your thoughts? So contact was big for me.
Sure, communication.
I'd say 80% of my cases are with that lab because of the communication.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not even price.
No, not really price. When I bought my practice, the person I bought from was using a single lab technician, and it was just a guy, and he'd worked with him for 30 years. And
in the office?
No,
he was outside.
He only had a few people that he worked with. He was actually, I think he's working out of his garage or something.
Yeah.
He only made PFMs.
Yep.
Sure.
You know, he was doing I think he only did base metal, and he would just stamp out the margins so that they're super thin and nice. And he just said, I don't want to work with anyone. His name is Bernard. I don't want to work with anyone other than Bernard. Bernard moved to Belgium for a while. He was shipping his cases to Belgium.
Wow.
And it's interesting because when I bought my practice, Bernard was a bit of a celebrity in my practice. Like, people said, oh, that's a Bernard crown in my mouth. And so, they'd say, oh, this guy's supposed to be the best. So actually,
not a lot of technicians can say that patients know their name.
That's cool.
For sure, yeah. But the guy that I bought from really respected his lab technician and made him, kind of one of the centerpieces of the practice. So
That's cool.
Pretty cool, yeah.
So then here you are, you take over the practice.
Bernard retires.
Bernard
retires with Doug, the guy I bought my practice from. He retired, and he was his last client. And Bernard's in his 70s, so he said, no, I'm selling all my stuff. I'm done.
Wow.
So I had to find somebody else.
So what about removable? Do you do a lot of removable work?
I don't.
Okay.
Just where I am, most people have all of their teeth.
Sure. It's a younger area.
It's a affluent area. The little I do, I send to one lab, and they do okay.
Local?
Yeah, local.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just a small lab. I know the technician, and it works out fine. Honestly, most of the removal I do is interim. It's to get somebody to something that's not removable initially.
Yep.
It's not something I enjoy doing a whole lot, so honestly, I price myself out of the market a lot.
Smart.
People laugh when I tell them my denture fees, but I'm just like, well, some people pay it, and I'm happy to do it for that amount, but it's a lot of adjustments, and I'm not the type of person that can be really. I'm not going to charge for adjustments and stuff. I just don't have the heart to do that. So I have to set my price high, otherwise I'll just be doing adjustments until
all the time.
So
what do you like best? What you do?
What do I like best in general?
Yeah.
Oh, I do like more complex dentistry. I think it's a little more interesting, trying to solve a problem in terms of do I have to restore somebody's bite? Do I have to figure out a way to phase treatment so that they can afford it over a period of time?
You sound like a spear guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do some spear stuff.
Yeah. Phase treatment.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. People can't walk into my office and do a $50,000 treatment plan, and I'm in one of the most wealthy towns in Massachusetts.
Really?
So unless you have a reputation like Frank Spear or somebody like that, where people are flying in to see you, you have to make it attainable for people. So that's been a challenge, and I work a lot with composite to get people there. Mm-hmm. I'll do rehabs with partial composite, or I'll do the posteriors in porcelain, and then we're going to wait on the anteriors, and things like that. So that works. I like that. It's a little more entertaining than the single unit, probably.
Sure, something that progressively gets better as you see the patients, probably quite rewarding.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure. And another thing about buying a practice is Dr. Vassis, the guy I bought it from, he did things one way for 40 years. And he did it really well. He's one of the most unbelievable dentists I've ever seen. He just has incredible attention to detail. But he didn't have ideas that were different. He didn't ever say to patients like, okay, we've been together 20 years or so or whatever it is, and now your mouth is deteriorating.
Yeah.
We need a bigger, more global plan. And it can be hard with some patients. Some patients don't want to hear that, of course. But there are a lot of patients who are like, I didn't know. I thought I was just doomed to this. And so they get excited about treatment. So
how long ago did you buy the practice?
I bought the practice 3 years ago.
So probably a lot of these patients, you're still new to them.
Yeah.
Are you finding things that the old doctor never found or didn't mention, and now all of a sudden they're like, yeah, but the old dentist never said anything? That's got to be a hard thing to deal with.
He treated pretty, I wouldn't say comprehensively, but he got most of what he needed to do done. I wouldn't say there's huge oversights.
Sure. You always hear those horror stories.
No, it's not a practice like that. Probably from a business standpoint, that's not necessarily a good thing because I don't have a lot to fix. But he does still practices with me 1 day a week.
Does he?
He does a lot of gold crowns.
Nice.
He still does PFMs, and he's doing it his way, and I'm fine with that because I know that's what he's comfortable with and what he can do.
And he's still passionate about it and wants to go. So
It's
kind of cool.
And you're scanning, right?
I do scan. I haven't been able to get him to
I was gonna ask,
give that a shot.
Probably not.
He does feather edge margins, and he can't really get away from metal ceramics.
What scanner did you go with?
I have the Medit.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
You know, I hear nothing but good things about it. We've yet to receive one in our lab because I think, with Indiana, we're waiting. It all starts on the coast.
Yeah.
It comes in.
Moves in,
and we get it a little late.
It's probably a little better to have things come in a little bit
you guys will
later.
Fix
we'll work out all the problems.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then
do you get any from Medit
I don't know.
at night? You don't
actually.
know?
I got to go check it out.
Yeah. What is it? Made in China or Korea?
It's made in China.
But I hear it's just like price point and what it can do is just it's there.
It's been fantastic.
That's what I hear.
I was in my associateship in a CEREC office, so I was doing all milling.
Yeah.
So I knew about scanning, and so I did maybe 2 years of just PVS, crown and bridge, and I missed being able to scan. I actually had a patient who wanted to do a lot of reconstruction, but she was a terrible gagger.
Yeah.
I literally could not get an impression tray in her mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, I prep a tooth for 15 seconds, and then I'm done. We have to take a break.
Yeah.
So I actually bought it to treat her, which is kind of a funny thing. Because it's funny, these patients that come to you, they're like, I actually have the money to do this treatment. I want to do it.
Yep.
But I have this thing.
Yeah.
So I bought it for that, and then, I mean, it's been great. I think that the difference for me with digital dentistry has been not as many adjustments.
Yeah.
Crowns drop in for the most part. It's been great. Patients love it. Patients love seeing what you've done on the screen. They just think it's like the most. I'm like, well, it's been around for 30 years.
Yeah.
But to you, it's cool.
Do you have any desire to go back to milling your own crowns? Do you miss that?
Oh, God, really?
Oh, yeah, I'm asking the deep, hard questions here. You're talking to labs here.
So. Well, I like lab work, but that's not really lab work. So, I mean, I guess staining and glazing, if you really want to call it that. Not really. I did have a brief moment where I thought I was going to actually buy a press furnace and learn how to actually press ceramics.
Wow.
But
you talked yourself off that cliff.
No, I mean, I would enjoy it. I think it's just that
every lab doesn't want to press anymore.
I know.
No,
well,
exactly.
Yeah, it's a cool artistic thing to do.
Yeah, very.
But. Yeah, it's probably not practical. It's probably not where the world is going. So,
sure.
I like you said, I talked myself off that cliff.
Good job.
Yeah. What in your labs are you? What percentage of things are you milling? Is it mostly milling? Or?
We're mostly milling.
Yeah, I mean, still
a lot.
With our lab, we probably 80% is zirconia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is just what we do mostly for single restorations and bridges.
Okay.
We still see a lot of full cast, a lot of PFM.
Really?
Again, it's the Indiana thing.
Wow.
I mean, I bet you we do 7 full cast a day.
Wow.
Which is a lot
we don't
nowadays.
Do
yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't cast anymore.
Right.
Those are milled.
Yeah.
And
milled
our
in wax,
PFMs are laser centered with argon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
We do 70% scanning, probably 30% traditional impressions, and we do mostly zirconia.
Okay.
A lot of EMAX, a lot of smile design.
Yeah, but those EMAX, you're milling,
right?
You're milling, yeah.
But we press veneers still, believe it or not.
Sure.
Well, it's hard to mill
we
them.
Seal
we
seal
when you get down to a couple
them,
tenths of a millimeter.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have the burrs for it.
Sure.
So just never could find the sweet spot to be able to mill veneers.
You had to use a brand new burr every time.
Every time, yeah.
But I love them both.
Well, awesome.
You know?
Well, you stopped by your booth because we happen to have Kettenbach bite material sitting here, which looks like the little worms you used to go fishing with as a kid.
Pink, green, and white.
Yeah.
I use the green.
You use the green.
Guy.
Can you explain to me what the difference is between the green and the red? The guy that dropped it off.
I don't remember anymore, but I do know that they have one that there's like a grid of like different characteristics.
Yeah.
One is hard set, one is not quite as hard, and then there's fat. There's different speeds.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So the green works the best for me. The reason I like it is because it's like when you put the models together, there's no squish.
Yep.
It is. It's hard.
Yeah. If you trim it right and you take kind of the detail and just get your cuss tips, then it squishes nicely, and it doesn't slump on the teeth. Some of them are. I mean, some materials are terrible.
Yeah.
Those. Especially the ones coming from those big box companies.
Yeah, Kettenbach's actually sponsoring us, and you actually use their material. So thank you for
and I use their hybrid polyether VPS material. What is it called?
Panasil?
No, the other one. It's purple.
I don't know. I had to read their ad so much I can't remember.
It's great material. It's great material. I get nice extension beyond the margins, which
awesome.
I like.
Well, thank you for the plug. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate
it. Pleasure meeting you guys.
Thanks for being our first.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
You were
Nice
our
to meet
first. Nice to meet you.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Voices of Dentistry, second day. We've made it through day 1, and here we are, day 2. An interesting gentleman came up to me this morning, Felix from Blue Light Analytics.
Well, that's correct.
Sounds good.
So you came up to me and you started talking about light cure.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
But you had a nice spin on it.
That's right. For the dental labs,
yeah.
It's important in every aspect of dentistry. And, again, it's one of those things that seems to fall through the cracks of anybody kind of, making sure these things are actually working.
Yeah. So, we make a crown. The dentist seats it. Hey, it keeps popping off. So what do we do, Barb, when that happens? I guess we'll make it again.
Send it back, re-etch it if it's EMAX, sandblast it, do it again.
Everything we can.
Yep.
Chris here says it might be the curing light.
Yes.
So the light's not 100%?
Well, this is just it. At Blue Light Analytics, we have different products and services where we've tested over 100,000 lights in the market, and 1 in 4 are not functioning properly.
Interesting.
And so this can affect the curing times used with the different light cured materials. So, of course, it's very obvious for restorative, but certainly for indirect restorative and also for, cementing crowns or veneers, the lights need to work as well. And it also depends on what material they're using. There's a wide range of cements. So for cementing a crown, a lot of people think you can get the blue light through the crown, but it's actually not enough. It's so thick in the ceramic that you can't get light through. So when you're cementing a crown, normally the process is you tack around the margins to get it to hold in place. But I myself as a chemist, my wife and my brother are both dentists. Not all dentists are aware of the chemistry in these materials. So with most dual cure cements means that you can tack that crown in place, but most cements, when we looked at how long it takes for them to set, it can be between 8 and 24 hours. So if clinicians aren't letting the patients know that, okay, well, don't go out and have a big steak or go chew on something that's really hard, because you could dislodge it slightly, and of course this can cause a failure. Now, when you're tacking it all around the margins, it's really important that the light is working and they go all around, and that will hold it in place. But certainly it will not permanently be held in place until 8 to 24 hours later. So certainly, making sure the clinicians' lights are working and that they understand how their cements work so that they're providing this information to their patients is a huge benefit to the lab. And so with a number of labs that I've talked to, they're not thinking, okay, well, is light curing important? Certainly when you look at some of the different practices, you might see some practices that have a higher incidence of failure. And how do you troubleshoot this? And so certainly where we do have some great customers, one of our great customers here is 3M Oral Care. They provide a complimentary service where they can come in and test their lights with one of our products called Checkmark. And so Checkmark, they'll come in, they'll test the lights, they'll look at the materials that they're using as well. So again, it's not just a light, it's the light and material together to make this process work. And so, of course, 3M is very much into education to make sure that they're using the materials properly. All those, the fine print and the instructions for use that a lot of people like to throw in the bin. It's an ongoing joke, but when you're looking from the point of view of a dental lab and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, why are we seeing an increased number of failures for this particular office? And so trying to have a way to troubleshoot this to figure out so that you don't have to redo that crown for them. Without charging. It's a huge expense for the dental labs. And so it's a win-win situation when you can identify where there's an issue, you can help troubleshoot. The clinician figures out where the issue is, so it makes their patient happy.
Yeah.
The lab figures out, okay, well, now we don't have to redo as many, which the lab is happy. And it's no cost.
Win-win to everybody.
It's a win-win for everyone. So really, the curing light just seems to be this piece of equipment that doesn't get a lot of attention. It's not as sexy as maybe as some of the other pieces of equipment in a dental office. But next to the handpiece, the curing light is what's used for many different procedures.
Oh,
and
sure.
So making sure that it's working, and especially for labs, it's the same. It all needs to be working for these procedures to work out.
So I have a question. So with zirconia coming on the market and it being so dense and opaque, have the lights been able to penetrate that? Do they need to buy a higher light level? Or I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but what has that done to change the market?
You're absolutely correct. It really does depend on the thickness and the opacity. So, if you're at some of the thinner margins, yes, some of the light can get through, but usually it's just to tack it and hold it in place. But for the next 4 to 8 hours, really, you have to use a dual cure cement.
It's going to cure by itself.
It really needs to have that time to set. The chemistry in the chemical cure, it's called. It just takes time. And, a lot of clinicians are not really aware how much time this takes. So as a chemist myself, when I studied some of the different cements from some of the big manufacturers, we found that some could set really quickly in 8 hours. But the way the polymer chemistry works is that if you have something that sets really quickly, the bond isn't as strong. You have something that takes a little bit more time to set, the bond really sets really well.
That makes sense, yeah.
And so, but clinicians are just not aware of this. And so, again, it's part of the process of, for a lab to troubleshoot, okay, are the lights working? Okay, well, get the lights tested and we'll check that. Okay, well, what materials are you using for cementing?
Yeah.
It's in some cases, there's some cements that have a base and a catalyst. So the catalyst is the chemical cure and the base can be light cure, like Ivoclar Variolink is a very popular cement.
I like that one.
Now, some people forget that they need to mix this together and they may only use one component. And so if you're cementing a veneer, of course, light can get through a thinner veneer.
Yeah.
Now, of course, for other, indirect restorations and certainly for crowns, the light isn't going to get through enough. So really, that instruction from the clinician to the patient to say, for the next, 8 hours, maybe 24 hours, just be easy on your new crown.
Sure.
And that might really give it enough time for it to set solid and reduce failures.
What makes these lights start to not work? Is it just usage?
Old age?
Very, very good question. It's a combination of a number of things. So first of all, there's no light source that's going to last forever. Even if you buy one of the top lights on the market, of course, they last a whole lot longer than some of the stuff you can buy for $20 online.
On eBay?
That stuff is just stay away from it. We've tested a lot of them, and they're just garbage, really. They'll just cause failure. So,
sure.
I always say a cheap curing light might be the most expensive thing an office buys, because as it breaks down very quickly, you have failure after failure, and you can ruin your reputation, right?
Wow.
So, really, a good light needs to be maintained. So cleaning it, some lights have tips that can come apart, so you can either autoclave the tip. But sometimes, if you're not taking them apart and cleaning them properly, that can reduce the output. If material is sticking on the tip and it's getting all gunked up, if you have cement all stuck on the tip, that's going to limit the amount of light.
That makes sense.
But still, over time, I've gone in some offices and saw some real antiques, 20 and 30-year-old curing lights. And, it's quite amazing. A lot of clinicians think if there's blue light coming out of it, it must be working. But if they've never tested it, periodically, then they really don't know. And, a lot of the instructions for use for these materials require you to test your light so that you can adhere to the instruction. Because a lot of instructions now will say, if your light is this output or if it's,
How do
higher.
they test their light if it's old like that?
Well, that's just it. Historically, there's been these little dental radiometers they can buy, but they are wildly inaccurate. Usually, if a manufacturer sold a light with a meter, that would be good, but if you tried to measure it across a bunch of different lights, it wasn't necessarily accurate. Mm-hmm. Now, certainly, measuring it with anything is better than nothing, but now, Ivoclar has a great meter. But what we have at Blue Light Analytics for dentists is Checkup. It's a meter that tests the light, but also you feed all of your materials in there, and it goes to the instructions for use and actually is a curing time calculator. So,
nice.
If they're using a cement, they don't need to go to the small print instructions for use. They can just test it, and the application that comes with the hardware gives you your curing times.
So they put the cement in the machine?
No. Well, what they do is they test their light, and then in the application, we have all of the instructions for use of the material. So the software says, okay, well, if your light is this high, this is the curing time you need, and then you need to shine that on every single surface to make sure that margin is tacked in around the crown.
Yeah.
So it basically makes them not have to go to the instructions and make sure that based off of the output of their light, that they're using the right curing times. Because the lights from the past would be 400 or 500 milliwatts per centimeter squared, the older halogens. But what's scary now is that some of the newer lights are 2 and 3 and 4,000 milliwatts per centimeter squared. And really the sweet spot is about 1,000 to 1,500 because you got to be careful with the heat. So again, a lot of these curing lights, if you want to see how hot they are, put it on the back of your hand and you'll feel a lot of heat.
And what would the heat do?
The heat will actually damage the tissue. So,
Okay.
Let's say if you're cementing in a crown around the margins and that light is overlapping over the gums or the soft tissue, it can actually burn the gums. And in some
Wow, I never would've
cases,
thought that.
in some procedures, it can actually damage the pulp,
Wow.
causing the need for a root canal. So, again, as technology has evolved and the intensity of these lights has gone way up, you do really now have to be careful. Where in the past you could have the light on the tooth for a minute to 5 minutes, and there wasn't enough heat. But now it's things have changed. So as clinicians look at what to buy, what equipment to buy, there needs to be some education around the light curing. And so certainly for dental labs, it's important because, if the lights aren't working, that increases the risk that one of the procedures might fail.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I take a fair amount of calls, through my history of, can you help me? This debonded. And I never have suggested checking the light.
Makes sense.
But I can tell you now, I'm going to go back to the lab and talk to everybody that's talking to clients, especially when they ask that question, to check the light. So thank you.
And what's nice is that the checkmark service offered through 3M is a complimentary service. So you can suggest to your office, look, they'll come in and test your light maybe once a year. They can't go and test your light as frequently as needed. Of course, we also sell a way to test your light, every week or every day to make sure that it's working. I usually get the question, well, how often should I test my light?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
And, I always say, well, how long do you want to go before identifying a problem?
So what is the normal... what is the normal schedule of testing the lights if it's new?
I would recommend once a week would be really good practice.
Okay.
Now, it depends on the quality of light that you have. If you have a better quality of light, of course, it's so much more durable as long as you're taking care of it. But, of course, if you're using an infection control barrier on your light, too, that can affect the light. So you do need to be monitoring just to make sure you know what the output is. So just because you have a new light, that's one part of the equation. The other part is reading all those instructions for use of materials to know how long to use your light and how to use it safely to not damage any of the soft tissue. So as much as we do sell a light tester, what we sell in our application is a system to manage the light and materials to generate the curing times you need for, let's say, your composites, bonds, cements, posting cores, liners, glass ionomers. Basically, everything that's light cured. And today, how many procedures does a general dentist do that doesn't include a light-cured material? And knowing that the light-cured material is 100% dependent on the light is important.
I'll say composites, inlays, bonding, all kinds of things, facial veneers.
So they test their light. They find out, hey, it's not what I need. Are they adjustable, calibratable, or is it just like, oh, it's trash, got to get a new one?
Well, what's great with the system that we have is that as the light degrades over time,
which is normal,
which is absolutely going to happen. There's no way, shape around it. Every light source eventually will be reduced over time, and at some point you may need to increase your curing time. So in our application, this is what it does: is as your light, you keep monitoring your light. When it comes down, eventually you'll need to increase your curing time. Once you get to about 400 milliwatts per centimeter squared, that's about to cut off where a lot of that light will not get through even the restorative materials. So before the light completely stops functioning, that's usually when the light is replaced, is when it goes completely dead.
Yeah.
But you would know that, I've seen some lights putting out 50 milliwatts per centimeter squared. And, the clinician had no idea, and the increase of failures across all their procedures was significant.
I bet.
And the cost of that would have bought them, a couple of brand new, top-of-the-line lights. So, again, investing in good equipment, good lights and good materials is critical because that increases the success of your procedures. And so certainly with the different choices for cementing crowns, you want to make sure you are using a good material.
Sure.
You don't want to cheap out there because, the cost of that entire procedure is nothing compared to, the $1 or $2 worth of cement that goes into it.
Yeah.
Use a good cement. Use the best cement that you can find in the market, and that will actually net you. That's a better investment than trying to cheap out on your lights and materials and increase the risk of failures.
So how do you get your name out there? Do you have a sales force, or do you just attend doctors' meetings? What is?
We're a fairly small research and development company out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada.
Wow, really?
And
It's a long way.
we work with a lot of bigger partners. Like I said, some of our customers, like 3M, and we're looking at a lot of our products have been around education. So we sell a system to universities to help train them how to light cure properly. We sell equipment to manufacturers for research. We have an enterprise service that 3M is offering to clinicians to test their lights, but of course it's not at a high frequency. And really, just in the last couple of months, we've just launched our product that is direct to dentists. So since we've never really sold products direct to dentists, this is brand new for us. So we're doing a lot of research to figure out what is the best way to do that.
Yeah.
We like to sell our products with education to make sure that it gets implemented properly.
That is so important.
And so, we looked at listing it with other distributors, and that might be something we may do in the future, but we want to make sure that we're providing the education on implementing a system that increases success across all procedures using lights and light cured materials.
That's
Love
awesome.
it. Thank you.
In a lab, we use a lot of light cure material, but we put things like inside a light cure box.
same
And with
here.
3D printing, it's becoming more and more and more. How are we going to calibrate these?
That's a very good question. I've only briefly looked at some of the different lights in the lab, and of course they need to be monitored as well. So because
we have a
those
light cure box, I bet you
So
it's
do
like
we.
10 years
Colzer,
old.
the old Colzer, you push
put
it for
in
30
there,
seconds
the
or
thing
60
rotates
seconds.
around. It's got these two big bulbs, and I know we've replaced bulbs in it multiple times, but
That's the
I have
only
no
time we check it is when the bulbs go out.
I have no idea if it's
Yeah.
working.
every light source goes through a process of degradation, and eventually at some point before it completely stops working might need to be replaced. So again, it's something that we haven't looked into specifically, but I would venture a guess to say it's probably important. Now, I always correlate things to, like in the dental office, if all of a sudden patients start having sensitivity, materials are discoloring or debonding or fracturing, they're clear signs. Now, most of the time the materials get blamed. Oh, there must have been something wrong with the material. But a lot of times we can trace it back to the light. So I'd say in the lab, when you're using your curing boxes, is there any failure or any flaws or any weaknesses in the material properties after? So that would be something to look at, to monitor, because if you ever see every once in a while, you're wondering, well, geez, that didn't turn out as well as it should have or normally has been. Then it's definitely if it's that old,
we need a way to test, because honestly, let's say you're curing models.
Or screw retained implants that we do like 25 a day that we're curing.
We cannot risk.
And I had to go back to the lab and sorry to interrupt you.
No,
but
you're
I'm
fine.
like, holy moly.
I can't tell you how many times models, you print the model and it seems tight, so you make the adjustment and then it goes into the mouth. It's open and you're like, was the model right? I don't know. Maybe. Was it the material? Was it the curing time?
Well, or was it the light? Voila.
We need to figure out a way to test these lights inside boxes.
And there's a number of variables, and it's important to understand those variables. And if there is one variable that you can control and check to make sure that it's not causing a problem, well, it's really important. Like I know in restorative, they're always saying, well, isolation is important, yes, and the patient's, quality of their enamel and dentin is also, but I always say, well, and the light. So if you can just test the light and make sure that it's working, you can just completely take that out of the equation of a variable that could contribute to a failure.
That's cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I can't wait to get back to the lab. I'm going to go to like 3 different departments.
Well, that's just
check
it.
The
like
lights.
I would look at across, your customers and say, look, where there is a higher incidence of failures, and now you have a process to troubleshoot that. And if you can troubleshoot that by reducing the number of failures in the run of a year, that's great for dental lab's business.
Yeah, and really, I can't tell you how many times I get asked, which cement do you recommend to use on this? And I honestly have no clue, no affiliation with any.
Multi-link. What did you say?
That a lot.
Multi-link or
Variolink from Ivoclar is one, but you got to make sure you're mixing it well. Now, I've tested, the cements from all major companies, and some set a little quicker and they don't set as good. Some take longer to set, so it's usually a trade-off. Some of the 3M cements, they do take a little bit longer to set, but man, when they set, it's not coming off.
I love that. It shouldn't come off.
Yeah, 3M is a company that we've worked with a lot, but we've worked with all different companies, and really, independent of the material that's being used, it's important that the clinician is using it properly and that their light is working and that they're letting their patients know that hold off on chewing anything, really aggressive over the next, 8 to 24 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say
I'd say
24 hours.
I'd go 24 hours just to be
But
careful.
they just spent 2 weeks in the temp being careful. They are ready to hit the steak and chew gum.
No, they are.
Yeah. No, every time when I talk about this procedure in particular, the clinicians are, they're just not aware. Because they're not material scientists or chemists. They are focused on getting things done, and so what we're focused on is providing that education to help them increase their success.
It seems simple, but so important.
Yeah,
that's great.
Big time important.
Light curing just seems to have fallen through the cracks of even education in university. When they're going to school, that the most education they get around light curing is then you light cure. Not knowing how long, not knowing, we got all these different materials, different shades. So it's the lack of education has been there for a long time, but we do have products to help train dentists on how to do this properly. So, since Blue Light Analytics has been in business for 10 years, we have started to make good inroads into the education. We're an education and research-based company, but we need to take all of that knowledge we have and apply it to everyday, clinical practice. Because what's the value of our research if it's not helping, the everyday practicing clinician?
Yeah.
I wonder how many schools their lights are not proper. I bet you there's a ton.
Or how many hybrids with Gradia
that
have been cured on those things that their lights aren't working. That's all I can think of in my head is,
big cases. Yeah.
You wonder why things fail.
Yeah,
we never ever thought about the light.
We see it all the time. With one of our enterprise products, Checkmark, we've tested over 100,000 lights in the market. And when you come across one, you can be in an office where they have 3 or 4 lights or 5 lights, and one is really not working, but there's still a little bit of blue light coming out, and so they can't find out where the problem is. So why some procedures are working out and some are not working out
because they're not making a note of which light they use. Yeah,
exactly. They only get the call after the fact, and so again, when we're able to come in and troubleshoot for them very easily and help them find a solution that again fixes the problem, they're more than happy. So I think from the lab's perspective, I think the same thing applies.
We have a lot of laboratories listening to our podcast, so heads up, everybody, check your lights.
Yeah,
super important.
Tell your doctor to check
your
the lights.
doctors
before you remake it.
And
or it pops off.
As a one-time test to just kind of have that first opportunity to identify if there really is a problem light. Lights need to be monitored regularly for sure.
Sure.
But if any of your dental labs want to tell any of the offices to ring up 3M and say, look, I'd really love for you guys to come and check our lights. That's a very quick and easy, no expense, no cost, and really might find the problem.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Appreciate it.
BlueLightAnalytics.com. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. We are here at Voices of Dentistry, and earlier today, the host of the Dental Hacks was on stage.
Yes.
And Dr. Alan Mead talked about this headlamp that he wore.
It was pretty funny, actually, when he was talking about his headlamp.
So joining us is Kristen Jenson from Innova Illumination.
That's correct.
Oh, my
Yeah,
gosh.
the company that makes that beautiful light.
And she came up and introduced herself, and we asked her, do you guys ever sell these things to dental labs? And sure enough, she does.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us, loops is mostly what you see dental labs using, right?
Yeah, yes.
And they're not very pretty either, just saying, because
they
have 5 pairs.
They aren't, but we actually have some loops with colored oculars.
Wow.
So you can make them a little bit more fashionable. Obviously, their purpose is to be practical, but if you want, add a little flair. So we offer them in a couple of different colors. You can get them in purple, blue, or green.
I'm going to take a catalog home with me, I'm just saying.
Are
Mine
the
are
lenses
ugly black.
would
colored?
be cool. That would be cool.
You get like
Presidents
one red and one blue, and then everything's in 3D.
Exactly.
And they'll look at them and be like, here's Barb's loops. Barb. Yeah, I've got 5 pairs.
Can you bedazzle them? Barb would like some
sparkles.
You know what? Maybe Barb, for you, we could bedazzle some. Yeah. What you want? Purple, blue, green?
I don't know. Pink and sparkles.
Pink and
go.
sparkles.
That's how I
All
roll.
right. Yeah.
Fireball logo on it.
What do you think about the fireball here, huh? It's kind of casual.
It is kind of casual. I have to say this is the first event I've been to with a fireball dispenser, and I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I'm like, darn, I was a little ahead of my time because I talked about having fireball for many, many months when we started this podcast. And then I come here, and they're talking about it from the stage and whipping out F-bombs and giving everybody shots. And I'm like, I like this meeting.
Yeah, you're in good company here. This is a good place to be.
So what does Innova come from? What does that mean?
So Innova, we are out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the name doesn't necessarily mean anything. But yeah, we've been around since 2006. Started out making headlights, and then have transitioned into loops and now microscopes. So
wow, we got to get that name out.
Before we started recording, we were kind of talking how neat it would be for a dental technician to actually have a light on their loops. Mm-hmm. This is really something that we haven't seen in our industry, and it actually makes sense. I mean, we spend a lot of time worrying about light bulbs that we do in the ceilings because it's color corrected, and we got to make sure because we're doing a lot of, as with dentists, a lot of shades and things.
Right.
Those lights, what kind of lights are in these lamps?
So they're all LEDs.
Okay.
All of the ones that we have are all LEDs, and there are a couple of different options. So we have some that you can wear on your head attached to a headband, and then there are also some that you can connect with a magnet to the front of your loops.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So you look like a dentist.
Yeah.
I want to look like a dentist.
Do you?
Just for a day.
Just for a day.
You know, in the book they called me Dr. Elvis.
Oh, yeah, I know. We're both doctors this weekend. It's kind of cool.
Take it, run with it. Yeah, nobody needs to know.
Yeah.
So pricing, do you like pricing? Is it?
So it really depends on which light you're looking for. We also have different discounts and whatnot that we can offer. So anywhere $800 on up, depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah. I'm going to take the catalog back.
What's your loop magnification? That's a hard word for me to
magnification. We start out at 2.5, which is nice. That's a good place to start out. You have a nice wide field of view with a 2.5.
Yeah.
And then depending on what you're working with, you can go up to a 4, 4.5, 5.
What's the most common, do you think?
It really depends on what you're working on.
Are you a 4?
I'm blind. Yes, I've been doing this all my life.
Is that considered like a high number for?
Yeah,
like
it's on the outside of high.
It's on the outside of high, yeah. And a lot of people will go up to 6.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it really depends on what you're working on. We've seen our 2.5s are actually really popular just because they're super versatile.
Yeah.
You can do a lot with a 2.5.
Yeah. As people age, does their magnification go up?
Sometimes, but it really does depend on preference.
Sure. Yeah. Excellent.
It sort of kind of does. I've had to go up a little bit as I've gotten older.
When you started in the lab when you were 12, were you at a 1?
Yeah, I'm telling you. I can't see. I'll try to work on a crown, and I just cannot see.
Can there be
anymore,
negative
so
magnification that it can actually take me farther away from what I'm working on?
I don't think they call it magnification.
You might be on to some new technology.
For someone that really doesn't like what they do.
Elvis
farther and farther
away. Yeah.
Yep.
When you just can't even anymore.
Yeah.
Just take me away from
Can I get
please.
that negative 3.5?
I should put them on when my boss is around.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't.
Let me see if I can get farther and farther away from you.
Are you guys?
Don't.
Are you only in the dental field, or where else?
No, we're in medical, veterinary as well too. Yeah.
Wow.
Jewelry
making.
That
makes sense.
We have had
collecting.
Maybe
we have had some people in jewelry and lash extensions. Yeah.
Really? I can see that.
Right, you need that detail.
Yeah, last time I did it, I didn't have loops. I messed it all up.
I know.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful.
Yeah. It was terrible.
Were you doing it on yourself?
No, the dog.
Oh, the dog.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, so you must have a very photogenic dog.
Beautiful dog.
Beautiful. Yeah.
He's got like 10.
Just
He's got
5
10
right
dogs.
now. Yeah.
Rescue dogs.
best looking lashes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's how you get them adopted.
Yeah.
So how did you guys hear about the Voices of Dentistry meeting? Do you have a podcast?
We don't have a podcast, but
will you after this weekend?
I think after this weekend I have to.
Yeah,
yeah,
you have to,
I think
The
podcast people are the best. So I think
yes.
that we need one so that we can hang out with you guys more often. But Dr. Alan Mead actually invited us. He just got one of our microscopes.
Oh, you do microscopes
We
too?
do microscopes, yeah.
Interesting.
And he just got one of our microscopes, and he loves it. So he said, you guys come on. We're from Minnesota, so he enticed us with the warm weather in Scottsdale, and we said, all right, people from Minnesota will take any excuse to go to Arizona in January.
And
so
now you're here, and we're all wearing jackets. I'm a little disappointed.
But it's really pretty outside. I just went for a run. I took a break and went for a run, and then I sat outside for a little while, and it warmed up pretty nice. No, I ran on the treadmill, and then I sat outside for a little while as I was basking in the Phoenix sun.
From Florida.
Beautiful. Love it. Yeah, I live in Florida, so I'm spoiled. But I still enjoy it.
Yeah, it's hard.
What's your magnification on microscopes?
So it can go up to 19 times.
19.
Yeah. So you can really get in there and see a lot of detail.
Yeah. What's Alan use? 19.
I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
I will.
Have to have him.
So do they have like bench light microscopes? Is that what Alan has, Dr.?
So
Dr.
his microscope, it's actually it's huge, so you can mount it on the floor, ceiling, or the wall.
What do dentists do with microscopes?
They get in there. I mean, they do. He talks about on the podcast a lot where he's actually working 100%
under
through
the
the microscope.
Wow. Okay.
I mean,
that makes a lot.
Yeah, so it
Wow.
really helps ergonomically. You're not hunched over.
Up.
Yeah, so you can sit up and you can work at a comfortable position.
Do you guys have one at the lab, microscope?
Yeah, we've got several. We used to do everything under a scope back in the day when, you finished metal and everything.
Sure.
But now with the zirconia and the mills, we've just eliminated it.
You can
so
just blow it up digitally.
Yeah, don't need them anymore. But
awesome.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, well,
we appreciate
again, what's
you
the name of
stopping
it? Innova?
Innova Illumination.
And what's the website?
It's Go Innova, so GOENOVA.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go Innova.
Go Innova.
Thank you for
thank
down
you.
with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Enjoyed
for
the
having me.
meeting.
It was a pleasure to speak with you guys.
Yeah, you did great. Thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
So a super big thanks to Dr. Mattison, Chris Felix, and Kristen Jenson. I have already asked a few of my doctors about checking their light curing unit. As a matter of fact, like I said before, I actually called all of my folks that are technicians that are on the phone and let them know if they see anything that debonds. That's another question that we're adding into our, what could be making it debond. So it's amazing how many of us don't even know about checking it. Another value that we can add to our clients. Try it. They will be thankful. And the next time you are looking for loops, check out the ones from Innova Illumination. Elvis and I loved them. They're super nice. They're definitely not cheap, but they're awesome. And if I didn't already have 5 of them, that's actually super funny. And that's a true story. I do actually have 5 pairs of loops because I am at the bench and sometimes not at the bench, and I leave them all over the lab. So if anybody ever finds loops in the bathroom, in the conference room, in the lunchroom, they always come to me.
Guys always make fun of other guys when they come walking out of the bathroom wearing loops.
Oh, and I'm so sad, in case you didn't hear, another event that we were going to, my partner and I, Elvis, which was the FDLA, the Florida Dental Lab Association Symposium in May, which I was also going to be on a panel on, has now canceled. So far, it will not be rescheduled, and we'll have to wait in 2021. Keep the faith, hang out, be with your family, exercise, and we'll come back strong. But I believe it.
I believe we will come back stronger than we were before. I think we'll be more valued once this is all over.
I hope so. Let's just keep going as we're going. So us Florida people, it's actually 87 degrees. I know you're super jealous, and I'm super sorry, but I'm actually going to go out. I'm in quarantine, as you know. Not in quarantine officially, but it's kind of like stay home and be safe. So I'm going to wash my car. Then I'm going to go lay in the sun.
Beaches are all closed, right?
Yeah, I actually went for a 8-mile run yesterday on Dunedin Causeway. They let me on it. No cars, can't go on the beach. I took a bunch of pictures and put them on Facebook. I was like, I have never in the probably 40 some odd years I've lived in Florida, seen it so desolate. But there was a lot of people working out and, smiling at each other, being happy, staying a social distance away and doing what they do. And that's, all we can do.
That's all we can do.
Get fat, drink, and try to exercise a little bit.
The joke is you don't want to gain the COVID-19.
That's funny. I'm going to lose the damn COVID-19.
There you go. All right, everybody. Stay safe, stay inside, and we'll talk to you next week.
See ya.
Have a good one. Bye. Let's be positive, okay?
Okay.